Hey, I'm Jeff and welcome back to another video. If you follow my channel, you know that I love growing plants on planks, but they definitely come with their challenges. Plus, I think I messed up with one of my larger ones, so let's check it out. I'm going to very quickly highlight the differences between growing a plant on a moss pole versus a wood plank. Now with a moss pole, the moss itself is essentially an extension of the growing medium. So roots grow not only into the soil, but also into the moss. So they get moisture and nutrients from the entire moss pole as well as the soil. Now, when it comes to a wood plank system, the plant is only receiving the nutrients and water from the soil, very minimal from the plank itself if you happen to spray it down, which I typically do each time I water. Now, the root system is the main difference between a moss pole and a wood plank. On a wood plank, the aerial roots, so these little things, act almost primarily as a support system. So it latches on or it adheres to the wood plank, and it provides a support system as the plant grows up. Now, the aerial roots in a moss pole not only act as a support system, but they also contribute to the moisture and nutrients like I already mentioned. So that is kind of the main difference between the two. This plant right here is the lemon meringue, and this one is the global green pothos. So I am growing them up on a plank system. Now, what I love specifically about wood planks is it's a very minimal system. So I don't have to, consistently keep the plank wet or moist or anything like that. It'll latch on by itself as long as you have a good starting point. So obviously you can see this started off as a small plant. I just used one piece of Velcro, and you want to make sure that the back or the aerial roots are in contact with the wood, and the plant will it'll figure it out on its own. So that's what I like about the wood plank system. It's very minimal. Now with the moss pole, you have to, I guess, consistently keep it moist or damp. Now, because I am such an underwaterer, most times my moss poles get a little bit crunchy and crispy, but it is actually quite forgiving. I also found that letting them dry out prevents fungus gnats from going in the moss as well. Otherwise, you can have a pretty bad fungus gnat problem with moss. This is the Baltic blue pothos, and it has just absolutely gorgeous leaves. Now, one kind of stumbling block that I have with the wood plank system is once it outgrows this plank, you can't really just chop it and then just put the plant back into the soil just because it has no roots, and most likely it won't survive. It'll basically just be a propagation into soil. It'll take time, and yeah. But where the moss pole kind of excels or is better than the wood plank is you can see there are two moss poles here. So as this plant grows up in the moss, it develops a root system into the moss, and you can chop it and basically take the top, put it in its own pot, and it'll continue to keep sizing up with new leaves. Now, with this method, if you were to just chop it, the plant would probably get smaller leaves, but it would focus a lot of its energy on the root system, especially if you detach it from the wood plank. And that's the problem where I ran into with this big guy back there. Don't mind some of these messed up leaves like these here, up there as well. The newest leaf is flawless, but this is thrip damage. So one of the things that I designed over the years with my wood plank is I wanted to keep the plant pretty much exactly in the middle. If it starts to grow off to the side, it's going to detach. And the big thing you don't want is to have that plant detach from the wood plank, because most times the leaves will start to size down. They need a very secure attachment. Now, what happened with this one is, as you can see, these aerial roots were starting to grow off to the side here, and I've been using these wood dowels as a directional support system pretty much the entire way up the plant. But what I did when I was trying to move this over a little bit is it actually detached from the plank. So that is not good. These white ones up here look like they're starting to search out for another, like an attachment piece or attachment place. But I'm worried about the next set of leaves, like after this one, because once it detaches, it doesn't feel safe and secure anymore. And most likely I'll get a smaller next leaf. Another thing I'll have to do is, as you can see, it's now growing off to this side. So I'll have to kind of pull this in like that and add another wood dowel, maybe somewhere up here or even up here, so that the plant doesn't start to grow off to the side, because once it grows off to the side, you're cooked, you're done. Now you may or may not have noticed this little white box on the back of the plant, and I have made previous videos about this, but this is my solution to getting a root system as the plant continues to grow up. This wood plank will pass up into this I call the rooting window. I'm going to be putting some moss in the back here, and then as it continues to grow up the wood plank, it's going to get a root system that grows into the moss, and it should fill up this box. Now I did make this as a much larger box. It was pretty much a little bit, I guess, narrower. This is 3 times the size of the last box that I made, just because with this plant over here, the Great Pothos Race, I did use that rooting box window. You can see there's the little rooting window, but it didn't have a large enough root system, and it actually took like probably around 7 or 8 months until it started pushing out a new leaf. So I think this leaf was about 8 months into the making. It did not do anything for like several months. You can see this is where I made the cut. Well, it's down in the pot here. That plant just about fell over, but you can see a lot of the moss and stuff. That's where the roots grew into. It had, you know, kind of a smaller root system. I chopped it and then I put it in this pot, and then it just did nothing for several months. Now you don't get that when you have a plant on a moss bowl. You can just take the top piece, put it in a new pot, and I've had pretty good success with it not slowing down in growth and consistently pushing out leaves. So that's what I'm trying to perfect with the plank system, is a proper way that I can continue on with the growth rate as well as the leaf size. Now for documentation purposes, this leaf is now just over 12 inches in length. So we got a 1 foot long leaf. Now they are larger than the other ones here. This last one, let's see, it was only about looks like maybe 10 inches. So it's sizing up again, which is a good sign, but I don't want to get a smaller leaf if I have to do a chop and prop again. So it's coming up to the top. So this is my wood plank system, which I developed the rooting window. So this one has a notched out area, and this is one of the original size prop boxes, I guess. So basically I just put that in the top like that, slide it all the way down, and then I add just a regular plank on top, attaches to these wood dowels, and then as the plant grows up the plank, the roots, these chunky aerial roots, these things right here, like how cool are these? They look like caterpillar feet. These will grow into the rooting window or the prop box there, and they will transition from supporting roots, like these anchoring roots, to essentially soil roots. They will grow into the moss, and that's the type of root system that you want for when you do a chop and prop. Now with this larger one that I have right here, I have a number of plants on moss bowls and planks. I have this one on a very narrow wood plank, like this one right here. These are just little pine, like pieces of pine, and I use these from an old bunk bed set. These were the mattress slats, so I just repurposed them as wood planks. But as the plant gets larger, I'm thinking that I need a wider plank like this one, just because it gets a little squished when I have to add these wood dowels into the wood. It doesn't give you much margin for error, just because the stem here is quite a bit thicker than this one. So I'm gonna have to find maybe a larger plank. This one is cedar, which is ideal. This is probably the most rot resistant. Pine is the worst because it's a very soft wood and it rots very quickly. But that's for another day. I have to find, I guess, a cedar wood plank that isn't super expensive and that it can accommodate these larger, thicker stems. But check out all of these little roots. That's what anchors the plant onto the root or onto the plank, whether it's a wood plank or a rock wall or something like that. These little roots do all the heavy lifting, and it is on there solid. I'm not going to pull it hard just because I don't want it to detach, but it's on there solid. So that's pretty much the plank system in a nutshell. Now I do get quite a bit of questions asking if you need to keep the plank like consistently moist, or should I spray it daily? I don't. The only time I water the plank or get it wet is when I water the plant. Now I do have a garden hose in the basement here. Had a little situation with that a couple weeks ago. Had a little bit of a leak. I guess I should say if you have a garden hose in the basement, don't stick it in a bucket of water and fill up the bucket and then walk away, because you're gonna have water everywhere. So lesson learned on my part. But now what was I talking about? Oh yeah, the only time I ever water my plank or get the wood wet is when I spray down the plant. So just because I do have ongoing pests in my home, I like to spray off the front as well as the back side of the leaves and then make sure that it is thoroughly saturated. So I will water the plank only when the plant needs water, so I don't do any misting or anything like that. So the only other thing I do is add fertilizer when it's actively growing. So this one has a slow release fertilizer, so every time I water it just it slowly releases fertilizer in the soil. But that's pretty much it. They are a very low maintenance, easy way to grow plants on planks. Or to get larger leaves. But the big problem is when it comes to propagation. Once they outgrow the plank, you can't just chop like a large plant like this and put it right back in the soil, because I've done that and it's died. So you can put it in water, but it does take a long time to get those water roots to grow into a large enough root system where it can, you know, put it back in the soil. Then it has to transition to soil, and then you'll probably end up getting smaller leaves with that regardless. So there's really no easy way. I'm hoping that this new larger prop box will provide a larger root system so that it doesn't slow down the rate of growth and the leaf size as well. So I think that's gonna be pretty much it for this video. If you have any comments or questions, please leave it down below in the comment section. I appreciate all the support. Thanks, take care everyone, bye.